Hey friends, quick reminder that this show wouldn't be possible without the folks who give on Patreon. If you want to help this show continue to grow, head over to patreon.com/queersplaining and check it out. Quick content note for today, there is all kinds of sex talk. Talking about sex, masturbation, body parts, and my weird discomfort with the same. My name is Callie Wright, and this is Queersplaining. So there's this local atheist group. They have a sex and sexuality meetup every February, and I've been a speaker there the last 3 years. I'm not going back this year for reasons I'm not going to get into. Different story. 2 years ago, I told a story called How to Fuck a Trans Woman, and it was basically a super long-winded way of saying that figuring out your sexuality as a trans woman can be weird, and it definitely was for me. And last year, I told the story of how my recovery from my bottom surgery was more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And since I won't be speaking there this year, I'm going to share what I was going to say at that meetup. When I came out as trans, I really sort of came into my own as a sexual being. I remember my first sexual experience post-hormones. I met with a girl I was seeing at the time. We were out in a secluded area in the woods. It was chilly, but not too cold. We were snuggled under blankets. I played guitar and sang her songs. We talked about life and the future, and eventually the clothes came off. Under the blankets, in the chilly air, we explored each other's bodies, and it wasn't the first time, but it kind of was the first time. We had a long-distance relationship. We didn't get to see each other very often. I'd been on hormones for about 6 months at this point, and I was nervous. She reached inside my bra to grab at my nipples, and I was really self-conscious. She saw me hesitate and asked what was wrong. I had pantyhose stuffed in my bra. I was embarrassed, and she told me I shouldn't be. She said she understood why I felt the way that I did, but that I didn't have to feel that way. And we kept going, and things were just different. Every touch was a full body sensation. Every nibble or bite or scratch or gentle embrace made me shudder all over. And she eventually reached down and touched my penis, and I recoiled a little bit and got uncomfortable all over again. See, dysphoria is a funny thing. I felt less of it when transitions seemed unattainable. Sometimes the longing becomes more painful when you realize that a thing is attainable but still very far out of reach. The pain becomes more visceral, and so embracing who I was in some ways made my dysphoria worse. Hate's a strong word, but I was definitely not comfortable with the anatomy I was born with. I could sometimes make it work and just go with it, an orgasm's an orgasm, right? And this was one of those times, but it didn't keep me from hesitating. She played with it like it was a clit, and I liked that. It got a little too chilly, so we wrapped up in the blankets and got in the car. She got out the rope and tied me up, and I almost passed out from excitement. She smacked me hard, and it was incredible. She smacked me again, and out of nowhere, I started sobbing uncontrollably. It just got a little too intense, I think. Was this what sexuality was going to be for me now? If so, sign me the fuck up, because it was awesome. And I never ended up having an actual orgasm that time around, but it was still one of the best sexual experiences of my life. I remember driving home thinking, holy shit, what will that be like when I have a vagina? I said goodbye to my penis forever on July 31st, 2017. The night before, I had intended to masturbate with it just one last time. One more time for old time's sake, right? We had had a complicated relationship, but not an entirely toxic one. Being a Star Trek nerd, it reminded me of the Bajoran rite of separation. It's a several-day ritual for people who want to end a relationship amicably. You spend a last bit of time together, remembering the good times, seeking out new opportunities, and at the end of it all, you break a bowl, recite some words in the presence of a witness. And so I thought, like, one last hurrah, that'll be cool. I knew it'd be a while before I got to orgasm again anyways. And weirdly, I started to masturbate and I was just sort of uninterested. I didn't really want or need a last hurrah. I remained cordial. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I was ready to say goodbye to my penis forever, and I didn't need a last date before it went away for good. I spent 4 days in the hospital, and they were mostly a blur. I vaguely remember a band playing in a park outside my hospital room window. I remember watching Star Trek and Adventure Time, but being too tired to pay attention. And I remember imagining vividly how awesome this was going to be when my healing was done and I could shove penises and penis-shaped things into my fancy new vagina. It was a cool, calm, excited kind of feeling. It was nice having something to look forward to after 6 to 8 weeks of painful and difficult recovery. They tell you it's safe to attempt sexual activity after 8 weeks, and that wording escaped me at first. It's safe to attempt sexual activity. Of course, that makes no guarantees at all about how well your attempt is going to work. Of course, I'd read all the disclaimers that, a small percentage of trans women who undergo this surgery don't regain sexual function. It was worth the risk to me. I'd read plenty of stories of folks who said it could take 1 to 3 years before sexual function would return, and that made me a little nervous, but what I was really thinking about was that 8 weeks. So on the 8-week anniversary of my surgery date, I decided to dig in. I lubed up my fingers and went exploring. It wasn't the first time I'd felt myself down there. My doctor had me put on some gloves and feel around, but at that point I was mostly numb while healing. This time I could feel some things. I felt around for my clit. I knew I was touching it, but it didn't really feel like anything. Like I could feel it with my fingers, but there was no sensation really coming from my clit. And I put my fingers into my vaginal canal, and it felt interesting. It was good, but it was more interesting than good. And what it came down to was that I was just not healed enough yet. I was pretty bummed. I cleaned myself up and went on with my day. And then the panic started to set in. What if I'm one of the 1 to 3% of women who don't get this sensation back? I'd be devastated. So 8 weeks turned into 5 months, turned into 6 months, turned into 9 months. I stopped trying. I was really, really scared. What if I got myself all worked up, go for it, and then can't enjoy it? That'd be so disappointing. I'm never going to get there if I don't allow myself to get aroused and put myself in the moment. And I was locked in this cycle. I can't let myself want it because I might end up disappointed. I can't get there if I don't let myself want it. I made a few half-hearted attempts, then stopped. Celeste and I went to a sex shop and got dildos. I tried using mine. Results were mixed. I was sort of resigned to it at this point. I missed sex, but I sure as fuck didn't miss my penis. Even if I never got sexual function back, I still made the right choice. Sure cost me a lot to get there, though. About a week shy of my 1-year surgery anniversary, I helped a friend move. I got up super early in the morning and spent about half the day helping. I came home and realized that Celeste was still in bed. I went in to check on her. She doesn't usually sleep that late unless she isn't feeling well, so I was concerned. She looked asleep, so I just got in bed and laid down next to her. I was tired from moving heavy shit all day, and I thought a nap sounded nice. But when I laid down, I realized Celeste wasn't asleep. She turned over and she looked me straight in the eye and she goes, "Your wife is horny." And she jumps on top of me. And a lot of things went through my head at that point. I was still scared. I was still nervous. I'd stopped even trying at sex things, but something snapped when she did that. It's been almost a goddamn year, and I'm sure as shit never gonna come if I never even try. So we went at it. We fingered each other. We rubbed each other's clits, nibbled on our nipples, and we broke out the vibrators and decided to do some exploring of our own. We each used one hand to touch each other while we used our other hands to work the vibrators. It was primal, but it was also pretty awkward because we were both really new to this. And something amazing had started to happen. I was feeling sexual. Being penetrated by something other than my dilator was amazing. It was almost just like I imagined it would be. It took some work, and it was amazing to me how applying a small amount of pressure in a different way, in a different place, made the sensation entirely new. I felt like anything sexual with my penis was pretty one-dimensional, right? There were maybe 2 or 3 different ways of rubbing or stroking it that felt good. Do that for long enough, and orgasm. This was different. I started thinking in 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, 10 dimensions. I felt like I needed to understand string theory to make things feel good, and it was fucking amazing. So many possibilities. What if I move this way, that way, penetrate deeper, keep things more on the surface, rub my clit while I fuck myself, and before I knew it, I was way overstimulated and had to stop. There was no orgasm, but oh my God, I'm fucking back, y'all. Once I realized I was done, I stopped and played with Celeste for a bit longer until she was done too. So a few days later, it was time to do this shit for real. Celeste was going to be recording her podcast for a few hours, and I was going to make this happen one fucking way or another. So I got set up, I got the lube, got some paper towels, put a towel down, got my dildo and started searching for some porn. Wow, it had been forever since I looked at porn. I've always been a kinky chick, so of course I went to Xhamster and clicked on BDSM, found a random hot-ass bondage video and got to work. Sexual things had never felt like a mission before, but here I was. Sexy time doesn't have to involve an orgasm to be fun, but that's exactly where I wanted to be this time. I wanted to know once and for fucking all that it was possible, so I got to work and it was awesome. I felt that familiar build start. I got a little overexcited and blew it. This is where I stopped last time, but I wasn't going to stop this time. I let myself settle and kept going. I felt the build start happening again, that slow and steady climb toward an orgasm. It felt different now, but it was similar enough that I recognized what was happening. Instead of letting myself get excited, I did my best to relax and just let it happen. The build continued. I figured out that it actually felt better if I didn't penetrate too deeply. Cool, I'll roll with that. Oh, yeah, there it is. Oh shit, here it comes. I think it's about to happen. Here we go. And oh my fucking god, there it is. It was a slow and steady build, but it happened, and it was ecstasy. It was a good 15 to 20 seconds of pure bliss. It was 3 days shy of my 1-year surgiversary. I cried tears of joy. I could finally make this happen. And then I lost interest. A few days passed and I thought, man, I should totally rub one out again. Then I started to get out my toys and just thought, I'd rather go watch Star Trek or something. The thought would pop into my head every now and again, and I just thought, might be fun, but I could do other things. It's caused a little friction between Celeste and I. She's a bit more fearless than I in exploring all of this. I was scared. She was worried that I'd stopped finding her attractive, and nothing could be further from the truth. I've always thought she was beautiful, and always will. At first, it was fear, right? I was so worried I'd get excited and be let down. I wanted to, but I was afraid. Then it turned out that I just kind of didn't feel like it. There was never any pressure, mind you. She just mentioned she wanted to and was in the mood, and I had to say I wasn't. She never made me feel bad, but I felt bad anyways. It's weird to miss wanting something. It sounds like something from a 90s romance. I want to want it. I just don't want it, whatever the hell that means. The other night she said to me, it's okay if you're asexual now. You know that, right? And the thought had occurred to me, there's nothing at all wrong with being asexual, but asexuality was so far outside of my life experience, I'd never really entertained the serious thought that the term might actually apply to me now. And I had a few thoughts. Maybe it's hormonal, right? Like I have 0 testosterone now, and I know that that can make for a lack of libido. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe I just lived without sex for so long, I'm just used to not having it, so I'm not as excited about it. Or maybe my sexuality has just changed into something different for whatever reason. I'm interested in the why, but I'm not sure what the why ultimately matters. I'm certainly not at the end of this story. Part of the problem is that I haven't been keeping up with dilating as often as I should. And that's totally a me problem, and it's one I plan on remedying. So this isn't the end of the story. But following the theme from last week of going off script and transition, I thought it was a story worth sharing. Shit gets messy and complicated, and that's okay. If you're a trans person whose transition hasn't followed a traditional path, I'm interested in hearing from you too, especially interested in hearing about non-binary folks' stories. If you want to help the show grow, share this episode with your friends. You'll find posts on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can share around, and every bit helps. Hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at CallieGetsIt. The show is on Twitter at Queersplaining. Another awesome way to help is to check out patreon.com/queersplaining and make a pledge to support the show financially and help me keep telling these stories. Before I go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things, and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Until next time, friends, this is Queersplaining.